The public says it's not doing any interviews at the moment. The HSBC line was, this isn't the kind of thing we do. And none of these banks was any keener to explain what they're about. Such wealth, such vital significance to the nation, and such terrible shyness. Now, one man who has been willing to pop his head, his unruly head above the parapets and defend the bankers, at least a little, is the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. So earlier I caught up with him near City Hall. Boris, have you heard Vince Cable's joke about bankers?
It's been reported to me. I haven't heard it. I haven't heard the great man.
This is, how do you tell the difference between a dead cat on the motorway and a dead banker on the motorway? The cat has got skid marks around it.
I know. Well, look, I'm a firm believer in the right of politicians to tell jokes, and it's a joke. And Vince
is it helpful?
Vince is, of course, Vince is quite right to feel that politicians should be able to make jokes. So, insofar as he's creating political space for the rest of us to make jokes, that's a great thing. But what I think he's reflecting is a genuine, deep public rage about bankers. And it's when you're facing that sort of visceral public feeling, you've got to be very, very careful that you don't take steps that could do damage to the long-term future of the UK economy. Because I think that there's no evidence I've seen that by getting all these guys to vamoose off to Zurich or Zug or just, deliquesce, liquidate themselves, you're going to do anything to improve manufacturing in this country. And what I'm saying is, by shrinking financial services or attacking bankers, I don't think that you're necessarily going to boost other parts of the UK economy. I don't see any evidence of that.
The government tactic is to rebalance the economy away from an overdependence upon the financial sector. Is that feasible?
I'd certainly believe in rebalancing. But in other words, I think you should
So you think there's too much emphasis on the financial sector now?
You can rebalance by boosting manufacturing. But what I don't think you can do is boost manufacturing by machine gunning bankers.
But don't you think they deserve it? I mean, are you proud of bankers and how they've behaved?
No, I think that many of them have behaved with great recklessness and very foolishly.
But yet you think they should pay less tax?
Well, I'm making a general argument about the economy.
Well, you're against the 50% rate of income tax.
You
think they're taxed too much, do you?
I think that the 50p rate of income tax is not a sensible long-term proposition for this country.
Well, what should it be for people who earn millions?
If you look at the major competitors we have in Europe, we now tax considerably more than they do. I mean, we used to tax obviously a bit more than, say, America or Switzerland or Japan. But we're now taxing more than France, Germany.
So
and
what
Italy.
should it be?
It never used to be that way. What
proportion of their profit should be given back to society then?
Well, I'm not going to give you a proportion.
Why not?
I think that
is 5% enough?
When you see banks...
A few more bicycles for your scheme, that sort of thing? Will that do?
You need to sneer at...
I'm not sneering at it, I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to...
There was something sneering in your tone just there.
Well, you can think what you like, matey, but I wasn't sneering.
You're not sneering.
I'm trying
to... So you approve of what we're doing with bicycles?
I am...
You approve of the banks giving money for bicycles.
What I'm getting at is how many bicycles...
How many more bicycles do banks have to give? Well, let me give you a figure. Let me give you a figure. I think it would be a good thing if Barclays, who are I can't conceal it from you, they sponsor the bike car scheme, you don't even have to look at it. I think it would be a bad thing if they made another contribution of roughly the same order to the bike car scheme.
How many bikes?
Well, we've already got 6,000, so,
So 6,000 bikes would discharge Barclays' obligations to society, would it?
I'm not saying that's the limit of their obligations to society, which is your question.
But you refuse to put a proportion
where I think they've gone wrong
of their profits, to name a proportion of profits that you think they should be giving.
Well, I think they should be giving more. I mean, I can't give you I hesitate to do it for a very good reason, Jeremy. I don't actually know the proportion they currently give. My objection...
Well, it doesn't stop you having an idea of what it ought to be.
My objection is that I don't think it's enough, and I don't think it's visible.
Well, if you don't know what it is, how can you know it isn't enough?
Because people feel deeply resentful about what the banks have got away with.
When we see senior banking figures perhaps in charge of banks owned by the taxpayer, receiving millions and millions of pounds in bonuses.
Yeah.
What we should do is just sort of do a Boris. We should just sit there, let the steam come off our head, but live with it.
No. When you've got banks that are actually owned by the taxpayer, this is Goss Bank, basically, the RBS and so on. Let's be honest. These things are
communist
Russian bank.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I think it's completely crackers that these people are think they can award themselves huge bonuses.
Crackers?
Yeah, I do.
Have you seen evidence that banks are leaving London as a consequence of the behaviour and the attitude of the public and the government in this country?
There's obviously you hear endless anecdotes about guys going off to Switzerland and Zurich.
Sure.
And frankly, I would say, as Mayor of London, the best advertisement for London is a night out in Geneva. So I've no doubt at all that some of this is exaggerated, Jeremy. Of course, that's right. There's a lot of sabre rattling by the banks, and that is true.
I'm just wondering why you're sort of acting as their glove puppet.
I'm not.
Well, there's no evidence.
I think they should.
There's no evidence. You don't know how much of their money they spend on public projects. I mean, why are you such an advocate?
I'm not a banker. I'm not.
No, you're their spokesman.
I'm the defender of common sense and the city of London, of which I'm proud to be mayor.
People are very, very conscious and increasingly conscious of the number of people, whether they're Russian oligarchs, fleeing African despots, Arabian sheikhs or anyone else, who are walking the streets of this city and against whom they begin, frankly, to feel rather resentful.
You're talking about a sort of resentment of the super rich.
Yes. Yes.
And again, I understand that. I think people do feel alienated and they feel very hostile and suspicious. What I want to do, I don't want to harm the wealth generating, the tax generating potential of this city. But I do want to see these people that you describe showing much more commitment.
What do they do for us?
Well, I think what they could do is give a lot more. This city
Why
is
don't we just
built.
tax them more?
Well, this city is built on the very largely in the 19th century on the euergetism, the generosity, the philanthropy of dynamic people who made colossal sums of money. And they built schools, and they went out and they founded hospitals and orphanages. And what makes me...
They're not doing it now.
They're not doing it now.
And they should,
They should do it now. And it's quite incredible to me that people can walk away with multi-million pound bonuses and not understand that what people want to see is them doing what the great titans did in the Victorian era.
If they refuse to do it, is it not the obligation of the state to take sufficient money from them by force of law to ensure that it is done?
That is the obvious answer.
Yes.
The trouble with that answer is that you end up with a tax burden that is, frankly, a deterrent to investment and to enterprise in London. So that's you're right to put it that way, but that is the dilemma.
Why did the morality of capitalism change in that way? What happened to benevolent capitalism?
I think people got into a kind of mindset which I think is quite wrong. They started to, because tax advanced and people felt that they were paying more and more of their incomes in taxation, they somehow thought that they'd made their contribution, and they somehow started to think that their obligations were over. And they failed to see that a huge gap is opening up between the super rich and the rest of society, frankly. And I think that they need to understand that. You can do...
That gap's really dangerous, potentially, isn't it?
It's not healthy. There are huge numbers of people in this city who are making an awful lot of money. We want them here, we want them to make money, we want them to generate jobs and growth for the rest of society. But they've got to understand that they're lucky to be here, I would say. It's a fantastic city to live in, and that they could make a much, much bigger contribution.
Boris Johnson, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the rich are always